Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show with your host, Phil Tarrant.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show. Thanks for joining us today. As you know, we enjoy getting property investors from all walks of life in the studio, and often we have some people coming in who have massive portfolios of 30, 40, 50 properties. Then we have other people at sort of the start, one investment property moving to two investment properties. But I do say the start, I was doing some research, and I do it myself sometimes. I know I talk about outsourcing a lot of it, but just really getting myself familiar with just how the makeup of property investors in Australia. And I was really surprised at some of the numbers that I was looking at. Most people don't get beyond one or two properties. I was thinking that there's a whole bunch of investors out there with really large portfolios, but you'd be surprised that only 0.077% of all Australians own 6 or more investment properties. So you find that, and I'll put the numbers up on smartpropertyinvestment.com, go and check it out, that most property investors, the large majority, and it's north of 80 to 90%, own between 1 and 2 investment properties. So if you're listening to this and you're sort of 3, 4, 5 above, you're already a very small minority of property investors. And if you're aiming towards that sort of thing, you're joining a pretty unique group of Australians who are investing in property with a considerable portfolio. Our guest in the studio today has 2 properties at the moment. He's trying to shift into his first, his next one, and he sounds like he's hungry. He's going to be investing for more. Daniel Ryall, he's here to have a chat with us about what he's been doing and how he sees the world. Daniel, how you going, mate? Dan, how's things, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, Phil. It's good to be here and see how it all ticks along. Yeah,
so I'm very conscious that I'm standing here in a suit and you're standing there in a pair of shorts and a T-shirt with a huge QB on the front. And before we started having a chat, you said you work out the SG of the Swans. What I wear for a living is very different to what you wear for a living, and I just go, shit, I wish I was doing that. It sounds like. What's your job? What do you do for a living?
I come from an education background, so I'm a trained school teacher, and I got into footy. I always wanted to get into footy, love footy. Coaching is something I was interested in, but it's a pretty tough game to crack into. Yeah. But I guess I found this role as a player development manager, and which, for lack of better terms, player welfare. It's probably the old term, but basically looking after the 1 to 3 year players at the club from all their from an off-field sense. So we sort of tackle 5 main areas of their life, and finance, resilience, and around their mental health's one thing. Just getting organised. We have 80% of our list come from interstate, and they're often 18 years old and never lived out of home. So a big part of my role is to support those guys and help them make good decisions early in their career, so that they set themselves up, for when they transition out of the game. I think the average is about 6 years for an AFL player. So you think about that, they're 24 and they could be out in the big wide world with potentially not many skills. But if they have people like me, hopefully in my role doing my job well, they go out with some skills and some good experience and good knowledge that they can really spread their wings and do well.
So I must admit that out of all the football codes, my knowledge of AFL is probably the smallest. So I'm trying to work out, I know of like league or union, whatever, the depth of feeder programs into clubs. So you're at the Swans. So how many players actually within the Sydney Swans?
So there's 45 on our list.
Okay.
So that they vary from 18-year-olds to 35-year-olds, and then we have an academy which they come through as well, which starts at 12 years old. So, and then there's a draft for the AFL, so they're drafted at 18, and they come into the system and right in being a professional athlete out of school a lot of the time. So it's slightly different to the NRL and the rugby, but we've got a pretty good track record of players doing pretty well, but it's not without, a few falling off the perch every now and then. So,
so you're like, for a lot of these kids, they're sort of out of home dad, right? They're leaning on you for pretty much all the problems in their life, I imagine. Yeah,
essentially. Well, like I said, they move away from their families, and their parents are, a lot of time in Melbourne or Perth or Adelaide. So, you act as that little bit of a father figure, I suppose. I'm only 28 myself, so it's a little bit funny when it wasn't that long ago that I was living in a share house with a heap of mates, but it's probably good as well because I can relate to where they're at, and a lot of the advice I give is probably I would have liked to have gotten 5, 6 years ago. So that's how I like to approach it, and I think the boys appreciate that as well.
Yeah. So. And are you like 24/7? I'll pick up the phone and call you anytime. Are you like I've got a problem here, can you help me out?
I have been. I haven't had too many, touch wood, but a couple of the boys, they live in a share house program, so there's 3 boys that live together in houses, and we sort of take on the lease. So often we might get a call from the landlord or a neighbour, just a bit of noise. But generally they sort of know where the line is, and they appreciate that we take on that for them, and it makes life a lot easier. So no, it's not too many dramas.
Well, it's the way with high performing athletes, right? They're typically pretty full on field and off field. But you mentioned it was sort of you look after their welfare, and I sort of wanted to pick up on that. What were I think you said there's 5 things that you sort of focus on. What are they? Because I think everyone can probably learn from this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it actually is probably worthwhile. I've done a bit of this work with school teachers as well through professional development around. So 5 key areas are getting organised, financial ownership, resilience and thriving, learning and growth. And the last one escapes me at the moment, but I'll get back to it. But they're the main ones, and particularly around that learning and growth and understanding. You don't have to go and get a uni degree. Like, that might not be the best thing for every player. They might actually think that doing something like this is the best thing for their learning and growth, to go and learn about property and money and how it works. So we don't try and pigeonhole them too much, try and really open up their eyes and find what works for them. So it gives us a grounding, gives us a conversation starter, and something we can revisit time and time again, rather than having ad hoc sort of catch-ups for coffee and it doesn't really get anywhere. So, I think a lot of people could learn from having a bit more structure around their life, I suppose.
So you're happy with the job? It sounds like you got a pretty cool job.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's great. It's,
and I doubt there's many jobs like that around, right?
Yeah, it's unique, and there's a lot of people who would like to have the job that I've got, and I always remind myself of that even when I have a bad day. So you get an opportunity to work with some of the most talented young men in the country, but you also help them on their journey and all those little things that they don't get patted on the back for, or they don't get their picture in the paper for. Hopefully they're the things that really count down the track, and you can play a part in that. So that's what I love about it.
How do you know if you're doing a good job or not?
Good question. Part of our thing is we don't want the boys to want to go home. I think that's so if they're happy in Sydney, they've got partners here, they're happy. Normally that's a pretty good indication of how we're going in our job. It's pretty hard to get a KPI around it or something like that, but there is certain things we do measure. But yeah, I guess it's that anecdotal evidence around how happy are the boys, and even when we're not winning games of footy, are they happy and enjoying being in Sydney? And
I think it's probably something everyone can pick up on, because, out of those sort of things you're talking about, right? If you look at it, sort of financial security, financial well-being is directly connected with, for a lot of people, mental well-being or your level of resilience to perform outside of these type of things. So you can be better at work, or you can be better in a relationship, you can be whatever. So I guess working with players, if you can get the home ground stuff sorted out, as in they're not blowing all their money on stuff, they're preparing for the future, they're having more stable relationships because they're more holistic in the way in which they're approaching management and all the other parts of their life. It's something that everyone can learn from, I imagine.
Yeah, the holistics hit the nail on the head. That's how we approach it. And I guess when we're talking to coaches and we say, if you let us get this right, and they go home and they've got an environment where they can go home to and eat well and relax and freshen up, and they're not stressed about money, and they're not stressed about their relationships and things that are going on at home, maybe back in Melbourne or whatever, then they can come to the club and perform perform in front of 50,000 fans at the MCG on a Friday night. So that's really what, I guess, coming back to my previous point around, that's probably the basis of what our role is there for, and then transition when they transition out of the game.
Cool. And how much do you practice what you preach, right? Like, let's have a chat about, I guess, your journey, and we sort of spoke about what you do for a living, but so do you identify yourself being a property investor as well as a player development guy?
Yeah, I do. I think it's probably my other passion, I suppose, away from footy, and I try to find balance, and that's one big thing we look at is, you're an athlete, but you need to have balance. And I guess for me, I'm a footy fanatic and I love what I do, but I need to have something, if I'm driving home in the afternoon listening to footy on the radio or whatever, or reading that all the time, I'll just go mad. So property and learning about property has been something that's given me another passion, another focus. And so I'm early days, but I'm definitely every decision I make probably around finance now is geared towards allowing me to be a property investor for the long term.
That's pretty cool. And how did you end up investing in property?
Well, my housemate in Canberra, I lived in Canberra for 10 years. I'm from the country originally, but lived in Canberra for 10 years. My housemate he got into property, and I didn't really know much about it. I was 19, 20. I was going out every weekend and probably wasn't that interested, to be honest. He was a few years older than me, but once I started working full time and understood that geez, you're not going to get very far in front if you just work for a wage every week. And he sort of explained to me how he did it. And then, my wife, we just got chatting about property being our vehicle to having a life that we can enjoy. And so we thought, why not? Let's just give it a crack, and got some good advice and got going.
So you talk about good advice. Who did you get good? Number one, who did you get advice from? And number two, why do you think it's good?
So the first one is we went with Simon Presley up at Propertyology. Which
so you used a buyer's agent?
Yeah, we used a buyer's agent.
Okay.
I met with quite a few, actually. I met with quite a few buyer's agents just to get I didn't really understand fully how it worked and, what I have to pay for and how it works and what they actually do. So I met with about 6 different buyer's agents.
Shit, it's a lot of people to meet with. Yeah.
Only briefly over coffee. I used to travel a lot for work in my previous role, so up to Queensland. So I thought I might as well meet people in the morning for a coffee. And so I wanted to get a sense of the differences out there. I didn't want to just pick the first one. And then I met with Simon, and he's a big Brisbane Lions fan and big AFL fan. So that helped us get us the hump.
Yeah. And he's also a good buyer's agent.
Yeah, he's a good. So we talk footy for most of it. But just the way he presented to me, the fact that they were happy to invest all around Australia is something that I was really keen on, because I am from the country and I'm a big believer in the regional markets and wanted
He's very pro-regional as well, Simon.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So that was why we went with him, and the good advice was to get a good team around us. So my next part was, okay, I was comfortable with that, but I need to find a good mortgage broker, good tax accountant, and just talk to people and make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's before we jump into it.
Yeah. So where did you buy? Where was your first property?
So we actually bought our first one in Canberra.
Okay.
After I started educating myself on property, I thought, no, this is a disaster. What have I done?
When did you buy in Canberra?
Bought there in 2017.
Okay. You've done pretty well out of it.
Yeah. So we've done pretty well. We bought a unit. It's a lot of units going up, but it's in a good location. It's positive now. We've got it rented.
Where in Canberra?
It's in Phillip, so sort of Woden area.
Yep.
Right near the hospital. A lot of government buildings there. So we've been pretty lucky that we've got good tenants in there. We know a lot of people as well, so it sort of has helped that we've been able to, anytime we needed to get it rented out, we've had people knocking down our door, so that's helped. So we've got that one, and then our next one was in Tassie.
And you used a buyer's agent for that?
Yeah, that's when we went to Propertyology. So our first one we bought by ourselves.
Okay.
Second one we went to Propertyology, and that's when we really thought we need to get some advice here and do the right thing. And we're probably a little bit lucky that the first one wasn't a bust.
Yeah.
But when we went to Propertyology, we got down into the Tassie market, and it seems to be doing pretty well so far.
Yeah, a lot of people have done well out of Tassie over the last couple of years. It's the only place really that's growing in value in Australia. So, and before we come on air, we spoke really quickly. You mentioned you're looking at your third property now. Yeah. Where are you in that journey? So we're just in a process of, we've just had valuations done on both our properties, and just going back to the banks to see if we can get credit and get money from the bank, and which we all know can be quite tough, but there's been some more positive news, I suppose, through the media recently about investment lending. So they're starting to open up a little bit more. They've still got the serviceability criteria, but they have a greater appetite to lend to investors, which is good. Yeah, so we're conscious of our serviceability and getting some advice around that from our accountant, and talking with our mortgage broker, who we've rated really highly and has been really open with us about stuff, and so just trying to get rid of any bad debt that we've got and get back on the horse and get going. So going back to work quickly, so footy's played in the winter, but you're employed all year round. Like, is that how it works? It's a full-time job, so there's no issue. It's just a PAYG. You go to the bank and say, regular employment. You're just a full-time. Yeah, so full-time. So season goes from March through to September. Then we have all our players get delisted. So there's a group of players that get delisted, 8 to 10 players. So they get told, sorry boys, you're no longer required. And so we have to transition those players out. And then a month later we have the draft. So we get a whole bunch of new players come to the club. So that's getting them into houses, getting them settled into Sydney, going to the draft, meeting the families. So, we draft a kid from WA on the Friday, then we're on the plane that night, meet his family on the Saturday, and he's in Sydney ready to start on the Sunday. So it's actually busier in the off season than it is during the season. Just in preparation. Yeah, onboarding or getting guys out and bringing guys in. So, and you, sorry, did you mention you're married?
I am married. Yeah, I got married about 6 weeks ago. So,
did you? Congratulations.
Yeah. So
how'd all that go?
Yeah, it went well. Yeah, down in Canberra, and had a big do and good weather, and we had a great time. So,
and your wife is employed as well?
Yeah, so she works for the government. So she was in the federal government in Canberra. Now she's up here in New South Wales government, the Office of Emergency Management. So they do deal with a lot of when there's disasters, so recovery after that. So if there's a bushfire or flood or something.
That's cool. And lenders like people who are government employees because they're good, strong, stable. So where you're at the financing, have you got the valuations on your current stuff?
Yeah, we do.
done?
So they're with our mortgage broker now, and then he's just obviously chatting with the banks around, what can we get and get a pre-approval done, and then we'll go back to Propertyology and see where they're going next. So
you're actually going to use a buyer's agent for the next purchase as well. And any particular reason why? Because I know a lot of people, they'll use a buyer's agent and go, okay, I've learned a lot now, I can go and do it myself. Is there any particular reason why you'll use a buyer's agent again, and I imagine again and again? Yeah, so
our first one, we went to the bank, did it ourselves, and it was a shocking experience. We just had issue after issue after issue, and I was away working. I didn't have access to a printer or computer, and our loan documents weren't signed properly, and it was so stressful, and I just thought I'm never going to deal with that again. Then obviously went with Propertyology the next time, and the process was just so smooth. We didn't have to stress, and my wife Jess just said there's no way we're ever doing it ourselves again. So, and it just makes sense. Everything lined up. They do it. They've done it a million times over, and I think it's the best money we've ever spent.
And because a lot of people struggle with the concept of having to pay for a service for someone to act on your behalf, to understand what you're trying to achieve, to locate a property and negotiate the property and then take it through settlement. It's for you guys, it's just money well spent. You don't even question it. Yeah,
well, I tried to, when I started taking an interest and listening to the podcast and reading and all that sort of thing, I tried to do it myself. I tried to get online and go through realestate.com and where's the infrastructure spending going and all that sort of stuff. And I just got into a big hole and didn't know where to start. And then once I actually sat down and saw the amount of effort they go to every day, and that's their job, I just thought, what chance do I have? I'm striking one gold, in the middle of all this stuff that's going on. So yeah, we just thought, what's the use of wasting our time doing that? Let's get the people that are the experts and pay for expert advice. And I think, in any industry, if you pay for good advice, you're going to do pretty well.
Yeah. Look, I completely concur with you, whether it's property or anything else, to pay good advice to people who can do it better than you can. My view of good buyer's agents, and not all buyer's agents are created equal. There's definitely a lot of very poor buyer's agents out there, but there's also a lot of great ones. We have them on the podcast. We've had Simon on the podcast, obviously, and he's every buyer's agent is a bit different. Simon's he's very data driven. He's like a proper data nerd. I'm sure he'd be okay with me saying that, but like he immerses himself in information. So he looks for the right locations to invest in based on the information he extracts from markets from all over the place. And unless you're doing it as a full-time job, you just can't compete. That's my view, and I think it's good counsel for people. I think if you can go and do it yourself, go and do it yourself. But if you want to make informed property investment decisions, you need to make sure you got all the information. I think your case in point to what you said, you just find yourself in a hole and you just go, what am I going to do with this information? I can't make a decision.
Yeah. And like what it did do was it got me to learn about maybe what markets have done well previously and why, and you could sort of see some trends there, but I was never going to be ahead of the curve. I was never going to beat those guys to a good property or a good location, or I couldn't wait for something to come out in the paper and say this is the next hot spot, and you're probably 12 months behind by that or longer. So I figured out pretty quick if it was that easy, then everyone would be doing it, everyone would be rich and living in their dream home by 25. So I'm a bit of a realist, and it probably comes back to what I do for work is, boys, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. It's you just need to take your time and just be patient and get the right people to help you out. Yeah. And is this it for you guys? Are you going to be stopping at 3 or are you going to keep going? No, we'll keep going. I think we don't have a number in mind or anything like that. I think I was talking to Jess about this the other night, and we sort of, what is it for us that we want? And
have you worked today? Because you're still young, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't really worked it out. We don't have kids or anything at the moment, but we'd love to be in a position where we could pursue a different career option if we wanted to, and not have that risk of is it going to pay enough money, or can I go and open a gym by myself and not have to make a whole bunch of money because my property portfolio is doing well. So it's probably that flexibility to be able to have that. We're open to living in the country again one day, and where the cost of living is a little bit lower. So
where are you from?
I'm from a little town called West Wyalong, which is out in the Riverina, between Wagga and Griffith. So it's about 3,000 people, little mining town, farming and mining. So yeah, it's not much out there. So yeah, but the thought of living in the country is great place to grow up as a kid. Loved it there. So.
Where did you go to uni to be a teacher?
I went to Canberra Uni.
Okay, so hence the reason why you're in Canberra.
Yeah, went there, played footy, went to uni and got my teaching degree, and knew that teaching would get me into working in footy. So that's what I did, and did a few little bits and pieces along the way. And actually it's been good because I did my fitness certificates while I was at uni as well. And that's allowed me just to get a bit of a supplementary income on the side while I'm working full-time still. So
you're allowed to do that, right? They're okay for you to sort of like part-time personal training, right? Before and after work.
Yeah, so I do that. And my goal really with that is to make between 5 to 10 grand a year on top of my income, and that'll allow us to go back and pay a buyer's agent to find us another property, hopefully.
So I'm happy you said that, because what I noticed with like people of your generation, and I'm older than you, right? But it's this whole concept of having like a side hustle, and people who are younger and serious about getting into property, I find most of them are doing something outside of their 9-to-5 job that just facilitates a little bit more income that they can channel into paying down debt or saving up for another deposit on a house, or the way you framed it, being able to have the capacity to hire the right experts to do what you need to do. So if you listen to this and thinking, hey, look, you want more money in your back pocket, one of the options is to work harder, right?
Yeah, and like if you look at it, $5 grand's $100 a week. You could pretty easily find a part-time job that you can get $100 a week from.
Oh, you drive an Uber on a Friday night, you make that money if you're really serious about it. But how do you run your sort of household budget? You keep it pretty lean, or? Yeah,
we keep it pretty lean, obviously. So we moved to Sydney. We live in the inner west, and we toyed to and fro about whether we get a housemate in. So we got a housemate in to make it a bit cheaper. Ideally, we'd live by ourselves, but we just can't afford it at the moment. So that's one example. We just get everything paid into our offset, which offsets our loans, and we pay ourselves almost like a allowance each week. And
do you keep to it?
Yeah, we keep to it pretty well. We've apart from the wedding, that sort of blew that out a bit, and and then on top of that, all of our friends and stuff getting married around that. But I think this year is really a focus for us is knuckle down and get that in order. And it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah. Are you going to do a honeymoon, or are you just going to leave it?
We got over to Vanuatu for just 5 nights straight after the wedding. And
that's cool.
It was pretty cheap, and we loved it. So, but we'd like to travel again, and that's another thing that drives our property sort of journey, I suppose, is being able to travel and have that flexibility.
You got time on your side, you don't have to rush things. But going back to the stuff that you do for work, and do you talk about your property portfolio, the way you see sort of financial management and sort of aspirational development of your portfolio to the welfare of players? You sort of share that journey?
Yeah, there's some that are interested. I don't ram it down their throat, so to speak. I sort of say, if this is something you're interested in, and that's where, back to that point I made before around action planning with the players and actually having a plan for what they're doing away from footy is really important. And if they identify that property investment is a thing they want to do, then I'll follow that up and tell them a bit about my story and what worked for me, and some suggestions around what you should read and who you should listen to. And they have a lot of time traveling as well. So they spend a lot of time on planes and buses, and, hopefully they can get on and educate themselves. That was my theory. I was spending 6 hours in the car back and forth to Canberra every weekend. Yeah. I could have listened to true crime podcasts, which is fine, or I could educate myself.
Yeah, what do you listen to? What other podcasts other than Smart Property Investment Show?
So that one, I got on the Property Couch as well. Good. I think they're probably the two that, it was only really those two.
It's only two you need, right?
Yeah, save up my...
Ben and Bryce are, they're very much around money management. It got me thinking about it the way we're talking about now. They have, what do they call it? I think it's weekly budget or daily budget or whatever. And they're really strict on, creating your own budget to live your expenses by and dedicate everything else into property. And if you're serious about investing in property, you really need to have that mantra. And like, I imagine the players that you work with, if you got that much money coming to your bank account and you're a young fella, it's easy to blow it, right? But you can only spend so much on beer and drinks down the pub. You got to do something with it.
Yeah, and that's right. And that they're pretty well versed on that now. Their managers do a really good job on educating them around that. But as I said, a lot of the managers are based in Melbourne as well, so they might not have the connections in Sydney like we do at the club. So we're fortunate at Sydney that at the Swans that we have a really good network of people who love the footy club, and we have a good reputation as a club. So I sort of say to them, like, for me to pick up the phone and speak to the CEO of a company or something, it's almost impossible. Whereas if you've got any profile and you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm,
plenty of people to help you out.
Yeah, I would like to come and learn about what you do, then, they'd have you in the next day. So the quicker they learn that, I think that they can make better decisions pretty quickly.
That's cool. Well, speaking of decisions, how far off do you reckon you are from a pre-approval?
I spoke to a mortgage broker today, and he's pretty. He's thinking sort of later this week he should have something in the works, and I think that's we'll go back to, like I said, back to Propertyology and see where they're buying at that particular time, and that's something that excites me about going back there. Like, where are they now? What are they doing? Almost like I try and guess.
Simon won't tell you where he is.
Yeah, I know.
I've had him on here and I've gone, come on, just tell me something. He just gives me nothing all the time, which I don't mind, right? That's a lot of their value, right? They're out there trying to get an advantage for their customers. So, but I wish, Simon, if you listen to this, come on, give me something, mate. But that's good, mate. Well, let us know how you go once you get this next one cracked. Come back and tell us all about it.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll keep tuning in the podcast, and it's good to have people around my stage of investment journey. I suppose that's what motivated me. I thought I've missed the Sydney boat a bit. How am I don't have that equity behind me, and how am I ever going to do it? But hearing people come on and say they've achieved it through trying different things has been really positive. So
well, the good thing about property is it moves in cycles, right? Like, we might be in Sydney and Melbourne a bit of a downward a cycle now, but you know what? Over time, I'm sure it'll go north. So, you might get in this market. It's not a bad time. But anyway, ask Simon about it.
Yeah.
Tell me what he says.
Will do.
Nice one. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you coming in, mate, and sharing that.
Thanks, Phil.
Remember to check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. If you're not yet subscribing to our daily morning newsletter, so you're the first to know what's happening in property and property investment right across the nation, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au/subscribe. We social media, Smart Property HQ. Just go and check it out, and you'll keep connected with what's going on. If you like what we're doing with the podcast, just remember to press the subscribe button wherever you're listening to it, so you can make sure you get every episode once we upload it. We'll be back again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.